Celtics were a way of life to me. A group of people so diverse you cannot imagine, working together day in and day out for a common goal.
I thoroughly enjoyed my teammates. And I always said that when I left the Celtics, I could not go to heaven because there'd be a step down. I am pure 100% Celtic. I think if you slashed my wrist, the blood would have been green.
And welcome everybody to this special edition here of Show Blitz with yours truly, Charles Prodigy Richey. As right now we're going to do a special edition podcast right now as I'm going to pay salute to the late Bill Russell, who passed away last Sunday at the age of 88. As he died at his home in Mercer Island, Washington, the metropolitan area of Seattle, at the age of 88. As everyone remembers, Bill Russell, he is famously remembered for playing 13 years with the Boston Celtics, winning 11 NBA championships right there. He was also a 5-time MVP. And, of course, everything speaks for itself right there when you look at everything, what he is. But today, on this special edition podcast, I'm also going to choose to look at more than Bill Russell, the Boston Celtic, and also his entire basketball career, which also included playing at USF. And, of course, playing in the Summer Olympic. In the men's basketball team, which was played in Melbourne in 1956. Aside from all that, you look at the guy right here who has been a true stand-up guy. What he's had to endure as far as like what many African Americans and others who felt any type of similar racial treatment, just racism growing up, especially in the times that he grew up. You had to go through the Great Depression, of course, into the 60s, which was a mess right there, a nightmare for a lot of black folks right there. And, of course, when you go into the hippie area, too, right around the end of the 60s into the 70s, just everything that he's had to endure right there. But through it all, he always handled himself with grace. And we're going to go ahead pay tribute to this man right here. Like I said, we're take a look back at what he really meant. Like I said, to me, the way I could best sum up Bill Russell is in these 3 words, or these 5 words, I should say. Bigger than sports and basketball, basically. And that's truly who he was at the end of the day. Before we go any further, if you guys want to follow me on social media, once again, you guys could do so. You can follow me on Twitter, at Men of Steel CGR, which is Men of Steel Podcast Twitter account, and also my Twitter handle right there. You also check me out on Instagram at Men of Steel Nation, at Prodigy Richey. As we get ready to take a look, but Bill Russell, like I said, he's gone from us at the age of 88. He was born in Monroe, Louisiana on February 12th, 1934. And just everything that he went through. I feel like the last few months too. I was like watching the whole NBA films. Basically, and plus a real fabulous documentary that's on YouTube called Russell's House. On that one. And that was done by an interview with him and Ben Simmons right there, who did a remarkable job covering this, doing the interview in that game. Excuse me, not Ben Simmons. I meant Bill Simmons, excuse me. Bill Simmons, who did a wonderful job capturing Bill Russell's pretty much his basketball career and in between, like his life. Pretty much folks a good chunk of it too on him and Wilt Chamberlain's on off the court relationship right there, which Bill Russell would always claim in his mind, it was not a rivalry. As the basketball lore and the all-time greats, when you look back at those two playing head-to-head, at the end of the day, people are still choose to view that as a rivalry, despite the fact that when it came to championship rounds, I mean, Bill Russell got the best. I mean, out ahead of Wilt Chamberlain in those contests in the playoffs 7 out of 8 times. The only time that he was beaten by Wilt Chamberlain was in 1967 when Wilt was a member of the 76ers right there. And they had an awesome year that year, too, in that season. Philadelphia 76ers, who in that year, I mean, if I was able to break through, stop a Celtics consecutive win streak of 8 straight NBA titles. But like I said, in that year in 1967, they won 68 games in that season. Thus, finally, Wilt Chamberlain having his win over Bill Russell in the Eastern Division Finals before it was ever called the Eastern Conference because how small the league was and how lesser teams there were. And that's a lot of people. That's one thing people were kind of remind and point out why Bill Russell, even though he has the most rings by an NBA player, the fact of the matter is that people are going to still look at the fact that, well, you didn't have enough teams in the league, and I call hogwash on that. I can understand where people are saying on that. I mean, the level of parity, but at the end of the day, you have to beat your competition. So it does not matter. I think, if anything, you have to be, I mean, truly take on all comers, no matter what it is. And look at, I mean, just the teams, I mean, in the league right there. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into it right now as we look at it. Bill Russell, like I said, let's start off with his earlier basketball career before we get into what he was off the court. I mean, his NCAA basketball career, he was featured as becoming a 2-time NCAA champion from 1955 through 1956. Went undefeated in the 1956 season, and where his college career highlights featured him as a consensus All-American. He was also the NCAA MVP in 1955 for his college right there, University of San Francisco. And what he really did at that point in time, I mean, it was just truly amazing. I mean, still, I mean, and there was a few other undefeated teams too that did Hoosiers later on. I believe that was in the 70s under Bobby Knight. But I mean, think about this too. He would then go on to play for the U.S. men's basketball team in Melbourne, Australia, where the tournament was not held in the summer. This one, however, was held in November through December, and he was drafted in 1956. Keep in mind. Now, there was a concern raised by the International Olympic Committee, Avery Bundage at the time, about Russell being no longer an amateur since he signed a contract with the Boston Celtics. Now, remember, he did get selected by the St. Louis Hawks at that point in time before they long became the Atlanta Hawks later on. And he was traded over there by Red Auerbach, who made a deal with the Hawks to acquire Bill Russell. I had to think of a few players, but anyway, the deal was this. He was drafted second overall by the Hawks, traded to the Celtics. The Hawks received in return small forward Cliff Hagan and center Ed McCauley right there. Hagan was serving in the military for 3 years and hadn't played for the Celtics yet. So, I mean, that turned out to be a huge game changer, obviously, right there. Those two would go on to win titles, would go on to win an NBA title for the St. Louis Hawks, who actually lost the Celtics. That was one of their opponents right there, and which they beat in, I mean, 3 out of 4 times right there. So they were 3-1 against them in that time. But anyway, in his rookie year in 1956, with that concern about him already signing a contract with the Boston Celtics and they're no longer being an amateur athlete. Because remember, back in those times, it's not what the USA men's basketball team is what it is right now, where you see some professional athletes. Remember, a lot of that changed with the Dream Team in 1992, 30 years ago, as a matter of fact, and where you would see players, I mean, coming out there to play for the gold medal only because they wanted to level the playing ground. But anyway, the tournament was held in November for December. He was determined to play. He had the option to skip the tournament and play the season with the Celtics, but he instead participated with Team USA, led them to an undefeated 8-0 run, capturing the gold medals. They defeated the Soviet Union 89-55 on December 1st, 1956. The U.S. Team won by an average of 53.5 points per game, and Bill Russell averaged 14.1 points per game in the tournament while averaging 99.1 points per game. On that team, he would soon play with his future teammate 2 years later, point guard Casey Jones, who was an 8-time NBA champion and won 2 as a coach. He would join him in the 1958 season right there. So that was a pretty remarkable run right there. So then you go look at his Boston Celtic career, like I said. And this is where it gets a little bit dicey. I mean, like I said, where people like I said, they choose to be a little bit dismissive when it comes to the level of parity that they had in there. But I mean, if you look at, like I said, I mean, his run as the Boston Celtics, I mean, think about this. Look at the teams, I mean, at that point in time. I mean, think about this. You're undefeated against both the Minneapolis and Los Angeles Lakers. Yes, they did beat the Minneapolis Lakers in the 1959 NBA Finals when they swept them. And this is about a few years after George Mikan, who was the original star centers of the league, of the NBA, who was a 5-time NBA champion. So this was a few years after he retired. Bill Russell and his Celtics would beat them in the finals. They swept them and then went 6-0 against the Lakers. So for a combined 7-0 run against the Los Angeles Lakers in that tournament, I mean, in that point in time, and were included, they went 3-0 against them in game sevens. 1962 was the one NBA Finals right there where you saw it go into overtime in the game 7. And then, of course, 1966, they done it to him again. And then in 1969 were one of the first times that Bill Russell's team ever experienced where they had to go on the road to dig out a game 7 win. Ended up stopping a pretty much star-studded team at that point in time with the Los Angeles Lakers, who had guys already established on there. I mean, when you think of the original cornerstone pieces, beginning with Elgin Baylor, who came in there before Jerry West did. I mean, Elgin Baylor was still part of the Minneapolis Lakers for about a season or two before they made the move to Los Angeles in 1960. Then he also had Jerry West, of course. I mean, at that point in time, I mean, who actually lost his first 7 NBA championships before he ever won his first one. He finished his career 1-8 in the NBA Finals, his only one in which was 50 years ago in 1972. But and then one of the things too, I mean, they were always say was like they're missing that one piece that was like holding them back to really truly compete with a guy like Bill Russell, because Bill Russell was one of the guys, was one of the centers right there. I mean, who's famously known for the way he would block shots right there. If you look at film on him, the way he would race up and down the court, I mean, it's almost like he was sprinting at times. The way he would catch someone. I mean, he was a master of block shots at his time. Unfortunately, block shots was not a statistic at that time. It would take years later for the NBA to start recognizing block shots, basically, for that. So blocks really actually started since the 1973-1974 season, when that started becoming incorporated. But anyway, you have Will Chamberlain right there. Keep in mind, he was one of the opponents who Bill Russell beat along the way. Remember, he beat him 7 out of 8 times. He was undefeated against Wilt Chamberlain in the NBA Finals, where he went 2-0 against him, both in 1964, where they beat him in 5 games, and then, of course, in 1969, the Lakers, who they thought they had, Jerry West even admitted many times that they had the better talented team, the all-around team put together that show won that NBA Finals. Instead, they're up 3-2 on them, lost the final 2 games in Boston, and of course, Los Angeles. And that Game 7 was had a controversial finish right there, too. Don't forget, Wilt Chamberlain had to leave the game literally on his own because of a twisted knee he experienced during the game. And Butch von Bradakoff, who was the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, I mean, their relationship was pretty much tumultuous at that point in time. When he left the game, and Wilt Chamberlain felt like he was ready to go back in, he told one of the trainers or assistants to let Butch know that he was ready to go back in. Well, Van Bradakoff decided he did not want to put him back in the game. He said pretty much told him to screw off, and you know what, we could win without you, because there was times where I feel like Chamberlain was possibly showing him up, and they were butting heads, especially during that season. The Boston Celtics in that year, 1969, which proved to be Bill Russell's foul season, which they won that one NBA Finals in 1969. They won that game by 2 points. Now, keep in mind, too, remember, this was also, too, Bill Russell made history at the same time as well. Because remember, at the end of the 1966 season, when the Boston Celtics won 8 in a row, which was 9 titles, collectively for both Bill Russell and the head coach at the time, Red Auerbach. Red Auerbach decided to step down, and he was thinking about naming a replacement for his head coach. And one of the guys that he had in mind, he was actually the 4th choice on his list. There was other guys that were being looked at too. I believe it was like Bob Cousy was another one. And then, of course, Tommy Heinsohn, who both turned out. So here it is. So Russell was Brett Auerbach's 4th choice, because he wanted to go with Frank Ramsey, Bob Cousy, and Tommy Heinsohn, who all 3 of them declined the opportunity to become, the head coach of the Boston Celtics. 2 out of those three were RA players. So Russell was like his last choice, basically. So he would go on to coach them, become the first black head coach in the NBA history to not only coach a team, but also to lead them to an NBA championship. So, I mean, which is pretty amazing right there. Listen, I don't care how many teams were in that time in the league at that time. I get it. I mean, basically, but I mean, you also gotta understand something too. Like I said, they own their competition along the way. Like I said, won 3 out of 4 against the St. Louis Hawks right there. He also won basically 7 over the Lakers right there, which was 10. Then once over the Warriors. And along the way, too, I mean, he beat his guy who was his best friend, who they used to hang out together, in Wilt Chamberlain right there. So that 1969 one was probably like more questions by people in the media. That Boston Celtics team was not supposed to even be in that position. They were a team that snuck into the playoffs basically, finished 4th in the Eastern Division, and was able to gut out. I mean, basically, and and then too, the only thing that was sickening about that was a few days after they won the championship, on that night, a few days later, one of the media people came up into Red Auerbach, approached him. I believe it was in his office or wherever it was, and said, like, "Are you satisfied, like, with your head coach?" And Red Auerbach said, like, "What do you mean? I mean, I already got the best head coach. I mean, we just won an NBA championship." Well, he said we didn't want that guy coaching our Celtics, and pretty much making a racial remark. Because remember, Boston too, arguably, I mean, for a long time, has had a lot of racial moments. I mean, with fan base and just their sports history, unfortunately. I mean, Boston, I mean, right there, the Celtics were like the only successful thing they had going for them. When you think about too, I mean, they were more of a hockey town at that point in time. They were their first Boston Bruins, then it was the Red Sox practically, then the Celtics. I mean, the Patriots, of course. I mean, in fairness, not until maybe like around like mid '90s, early 2000s when Tom Brady came on board with Bill Belichick. But Boston Celtics too also had an original, I think, all black starting lineup too. By the way, I mean they did a lot of things historically as a diverse franchise right there. And I mean, for Bill Russell to endure what he had to do, as far as like having stuff done in his home, in his bedroom, with, I mean, being defecated. I mean, just a lot of stuff he had to endure. At the end of the day, when you look at a guy like Bill Russell, he handled himself gracefully. And you can make the argument too. I mean, with him, because listen, I mean, championships were no doubt about will always be Bill Russell's pride and joy when we look at this man. But to me, I'm almost kind of getting the feeling too, like the championships were like icing on the cake in his mind. He wanted to fight for equality just as anyone else had, like any other black person in this world or in this country, alone. Because you think about like what he had to do right there too. I mean, after Bill Russell, I mean, he stepped away from basketball for a few years, but went on to coach again. He coached 2 more teams. He coached the Seattle SuperSox from 1973 through 1977, and the Kings in 1988. Where only had 2 more winning seasons. That was only with the Supersonics. I mean, check this out too. Even as a kid growing up, experienced a lot of racism as a child, where his parents moved into housing projects to escape the bigotry. Him and his teammates were jeered at USF by white students in college. And during his Celtics career, him and his black teammates were denied rooms in North Carolina where NBA stars toured the U.S. I mean, another example, prior to the 1961-1962 season, a very famous story that a lot of us caught wind of too the last couple of years or even growing up, whatever it was. Team was scheduled to play an exhibition in Lexington, Kentucky, and restaurant owners refused to serve them. As a result, him and his other black teammates like Casey and Sam Jones and others chose to fly home while enduring a great deal of controversy and publicity. I mean, he was very active in the Black Power movement as he was seen with other famous athletes and the Muhammad Ali Summit. Now, remember the Muhammad Ali Summit. Uh, it was Muhammad Ali, I believe, was eligible to be drafted. Uh, was chosen to serve in Vietnam. He refused. And don't forget too, like about like not too long before this time too, uh, Muhammad Ali, who's before known as Cassius Clay, he converted basically his he converted his religion basically. Is to Islam right there. Who be so basically, I mean, remember he eventually changed his name, and one of the controversies too with Muhammad Ali, the thing that kind of like got him. I mean, he said that you know what he would only go to war unless asked by their leader of Islam, and then not that too. I mean, for being a black man, it's like why would he be forced to go to war and kill fellow black African Americans along the way too, which is pretty controversial right there. I mean, guys like in the Muhammad Ali Summit back on June 4th, 1967. I mean, which was led by Jim Brown and of course with Bill Russell. You also had Lou Alcindor before he became Kareem Abdul-Jabbar 4 years later after winning his first NBA championship with the Milwaukee Bucks. Willie Davis, who was a Green Bay Packer, they wanted to try and reason with him, find out what was going on, why he was refusing to serve in Vietnam. But at the end of the day, they all stood in unionship for Muhammad Ali right there. And just, you know what, they gave him their blessing of support at the end of the day. That's the type of guy that Bill Russell was. He always kept striving. He always stayed classy. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, you look at everything that he's had to endure. I mean, even when like his career was over, he went over as into a broadcaster role. I mean, that was kind of like hit or miss. I mean, truthfully, but I mean, still, I mean, he separated himself from Boston, lived in Seattle since 1973, basically for the remainder of his time, and he was not a guy that would be pushed around. I mean, he even said too, I think like when he was born, it's like, why should I have to earn my U.S. rights? I mean, that should already be given when I was born. I think Bob Plaschke, not Bob Plaschke, I think it was Bob Ryan, I think it was, who was saying that, of the Boston Times, who actually just did like a podcast on YouTube this past week when Bill Russell passed away. But anyway, this is how I choose to remember Bill Russell. Bill Russell, in my opinion, he was a guy who was a stand-up guy. And I'll say it again, bigger in sports and basketball. Bigger than sports and basketball, excuse me. I mean, a guy who was trying to push the envelope, who tried following the footsteps of Jackie Robinson, because he even noted, too, in Russell's house that Jackie Robinson was a significant guy who broke the color barrier in baseball. I mean, becoming the first black player to play in the major leagues with white players. So you look at that right there. I mean, he said that he got them from point A to point B, and he always kept that in mind. And so even all the time, too, I mean, all that stuff right there, I mean, just the way he stood up. I mean, even support. I mean, look at like 5 years ago, too, on September 26th, in 2017, Russell posted a photograph of himself to a previously unused Twitter account in which he was taking the knee in solidarity with the U.S. national anthem kneeling protests. Uh, and basically, he wore his Presidential Medal of Freedom, and the image was captioned, "Proud to take a knee and to stand tall against social injustice," in an interview with ESPN. Russell said he wanted the NFL players to know they were not alone. That's what you need to know. As far as like on the basketball side, if you're asking me to put him on a Mount Rushmore, you know what? He's got to be included, I think, definitely in that top four. Because here's the thing, Michael Jordan, no doubt, I mean, is the all time GOAT because of the way he dominated both statistically and winning wise. But then the thing is, too, people would also argue if it's truly about winning. Remember, Russell did have only one loss, 11 NBA titles. Okay, I mean, he did that in 13 years. You had Michael Jordan. I mean, basically, I mean, his NBA career. I mean, who did that in 15 seasons. He retired twice in his career in between, but he still had, I mean, much more teams. Never lost in NBA Finals. But I think Bill Russell has to be considered. It's no one to push over. So, I mean, Bill Russell, you probably, I mean, right now, I'm not sure exactly. I mean, on Mount Rushmore, but if he had to have a fifth person, I think I'd put him on there in the top five at least. I would probably go with Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. No, I mean, let me say that again. Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Bill Russell. And then the fifth, well, Larry Bird and Bill Russell, excuse me. So that if you had to do five as opposed to four, that's how I would do it. I would do Jordan, James, Kareem, Bird, and Russell. And the only reason why I probably put Bill Russell behind Larry Bird is because Larry Bird was a lights out shooter, just like Michael Jordan was when it came to game winning shots. But like I said, that's gonna do it for this right here. I just want to pay tribute once again to the man, the myth, the legend, Bill Russell too, and also too. I just want to just say this in closing. I mean, you talk about one of the greatest competition between Russell or Chamberlain. If you're going to ask who's better between Russell or Chamberlain, I'm going to go with Bill Russell. I mean, yeah, Wilt Chamberlain did stuff with the basketball that no doubt he could boggle your mind the way he would score, rebound, and command. I mean, dominance. But at the end of the day, too, like I said, Bill Russell knew how to get his team involved, sacrifice more. I mean, look at the numbers right there. I mean, career-wise versus Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell averaged 14 and a half points, 5 rebounds, and about 23 assists versus Wilt Chamberlain's 28 and a half points, 5 rebounds, and 27 assists. At the end of the day, listen, I get the numbers, but at the same time, too, when it came to money games, what Bill Russell found a way to get the last laugh or last cackle, I guess you could say. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Definitely heartbroken to say the least, losing him a week ago. And Godspeed, my friend. There'll never be another one like you in a long time. Maybe you could argue LeBron James. I don't think so. I mean, maybe not in that level, but I mean, LeBron James is definitely trying, to his credit, tries to build up an image so bad that he wants to make change in the world, not just for the game of basketball. So that's how I'm gonna remember Bill Russell. I would remember him more as the all-around stand-up guy and anything. And to be honest with you too, I mean, you can make him probably co-GOAT with Michael Jordan as far as like the all-time GOAT. I'm still gonna probably give Michael Jordan the edge, but it never hurts if you had to pick like someone to go side with him. Probably Russell would not be a bad choice. But anyway, once again, you guys can follow me on Twitter at MountSteelCGR and on Instagram at MountSteelNation. And like I said, I'm be doing a schedule change on the Mount Steel podcast. I announced it last week, covering the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to do it on Sundays and Tuesdays. That'll begin next Sunday, as a matter of fact, once the Pittsburgh Steelers play their first exhibition game of the season this Saturday. As I always leave you, don't be trolling, be rolling. And Bill Russell, Godspeed once again. Thank you for everything, sir. Loved everything that you were about. And thank you for gracing us with your presence for so many years. And just for being so authentic, genuine, and understanding. And more importantly, too, just teaching us, just like a lot of people who I knew in my life, how to just learn to laugh at situations sometimes. Not to take things too seriously. Take them serious, but don't take them too serious. You got to learn to loosen up. And he's always done that. We love you. We miss you. And here.
What time is it? Game time!